Good morning, Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington, Friday, the 9th of October, and perhaps the last day in which we will see 80s for a while. In fact, it might not even get to 80 today. It might just be in the 70s tomorrow, though, 60 and raining. And boy, do we need that rain. We know what it's like for the land not to have water. Thank goodness we got enough snow late in the season this year, but we got enough in the mountains to where there's still irrigation water. The canals, the ditches, the pipes are still full. Fields are still being watered. I'm still putting water on my lawn and giving my trees a deep watering before they gradually then go to sleep and the sap begins to flow back down. As we know from the story of Genesis, there was a 7-year time of plenty throughout the land, and Joseph, who was put in charge of all of the production in Egypt, planned for what would follow that, the 7 years of famine, drought, pestilence. Well, the 7 years came and went. Joseph's father came and went. Joseph and his brothers came and went. And as we found out in this first paragraph of the book of Exodus, what was left behind were a people who, even after the famine was over, stayed and continued to do well and prosper and multiply their numbers, their flocks, the amount of land that they were then tilling, the amount of water they were using up. And now we get generations later, we're not sure how many. Historians try to put timelines on this. If Jacob is sometime in the 17th century before Jesus, then down to around the 13th century is when we finally see the outcry of the people heard by God. So there's 400 years from the time of Joseph going down and his father and the brothers and settling there until the story of the Exodus will formally begin. The book of Exodus, though, begins with the recalling of this change of how the Israelites went from being honored guests to a nuisance, to something to possibly fear, to something to demean, to simply being dehumanized and used. How does that happen? It doesn't happen quickly. It happens over a long period of time. Chapter 1, verse 8 of the book of Exodus. Now a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. What that would mean is not that he knew him personally, but that the name Joseph meant nothing to him. Joseph had been dead most likely for generations. And who is this Joseph and why should I care? All of these Israelites are here and I don't care why they're here. But verse 9, he said to his people, the Israelite people are more numerous and powerful than we are. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase, and in the event of war, join our enemies and fight against us, and escape from the land. Deal shrewdly with them, or they will escape from the land. Why didn't they want to escape from the land? Well, obviously, Egypt as a country is still prospering because of the production of the Israelites and the production of the Egyptians, who up till now have developed a cooperative and respectful relationship. Their children play together, they grow up together. The Israelites have their God, however, and they maintain some form of worship, some sense of an identity, a sense of calling, that they are the children, the tribes of Israel. They are the Israelites. They are a nation within a nation, and their numbers are greater than the Egyptians. Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. Oh, You'd think that they would say, once they've become slaves, then we don't want them to escape from the land. Why wouldn't you want them to escape and leave the land? Why wouldn't you just kick them out and go, aren't you supposed to be somewhere else? And that's the other question. Aren't they supposed to be somewhere else? Shouldn't they be asking that? We went down to Egypt because there was a famine, and I don't know, that was in great-great-grandpa's time. And I heard this story that's being passed on by oral tradition about some old guy named Abraham, and God gave Abraham this land called Canaan, and apparently it's, I don't know, it's somewhere up to the northeast of here, up around, you got to go around that sea and up through the desert, and it's 300 miles, and I don't know why we'd want to do that. We've got everything we need right here. The taskmasters oppressed them with forced labor. They built cities, Pithom and Ramses for Pharaoh. The more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The Egyptians became ruthless in imposing tasks on the Israelites. They were ruthless in all the tasks that they imposed on them. But that wasn't enough. They were using them. They had become enslaved, and they were now mistreated, abused, dehumanized. But still they were multiplying. So what's Pharaoh to do? The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you act as midwives to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, she shall live. But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. So these are Israelite women who themselves don't yet have families, apparently. And they are then helping the Israelite women, their sisters, their cousins, people within their tribes and clans in the birth process. We even get the names of two of them, Shiphrah and Puah. Now, when your name makes it into the Bible, I mean, that's something, isn't it? I wonder, will we hear from Shiphrah and Puah again? It's an interesting detail that somehow these two names, which became part of the oral tradition, then made it into the written account of this story. And again, as I said before, this is the formative story, even as the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob give us this concept of a God who has chosen a single person. Now God has to then take the descendants of that person and shape them into a holy people, a royal nation for God. That's the story of the Exodus, the shaping of the people. And somehow, necessary to that process was their enslavement and their persecution. That's a difficult concept to understand. My people, my ancestors being Northern European for many, many generations, weren't enslaved at any point that I am aware of. I can't say that for others that I have known, my black friends and acquaintances, who can very definitely say my ancestors were slaves. They knew what it was like to experience what the Hebrews did. So for me to even really appreciate what the Hebrews went through, what the Israelites went through, I need the perspective of my black friends. I need to be in dialogue with them to fully understand what it means to be the descendants of people who were enslaved and to still carry some of that identity, even as the Jews today, all of them still carry the identity of having come through the Exodus. In fact, one of my Jewish friends says, Ron, do you know how many Jews today were alive during the Holocaust? And I says, well, yeah, I know you were born afterward because your mom was 6 months old when your grandparents, my neighbors, got out of Germany with them. And he says, no, all of us alive today participated in the Holocaust because that's our understanding as a people. We are linked as Jews all the way back to the Holocaust, to the revolt in 132, to the Exodus 3,300 years ago. We were all slaves in Egypt. We are all free people. We are all God's chosen. It's a different understanding than we as Christians bring. I mean, I have a sense of the historical nature of our faith, that I am Lutheran, and that goes back 500 years now, 503 years since Reformation Day. But I am Catholic because my faith is from the Catholic faith that gave birth to the Lutheran movement. And that goes back to the early church, before there was a Catholic church, when it was simply the Apostolic Church. Many of the denominations that came out of the American experience that were founded between 1820 and 1850, and we can name many, many of them, the Christians and what we would call para-Christian organizations that were founded in this country, and they were founded upon this idea of freedom, of separation of church and state, separation of powers, the individual responsibility, individual success. And this idea is that I am a new person before God. The Holy Spirit dwells within me, and I am personally saved by Jesus Christ. There isn't the sense of we as the people of God are chosen, saved, empowered together. And are one. And yet, my friends and pastors of other denominations will say, we do accept the truth of the Apostle and Nicene creeds. And we do kind of understand this concept that you as Lutherans and Catholics and others have, that when you say that together, that it echoes through the centuries. We are a people together. Just as we are all connected to the cross. So the Jews are connected to the enslavement in Israel. Tomorrow we then find out the second remedy. The first remedy, enslave them. What's the second remedy, though?